After giving everyone 20 minutes to prepare, Shiro made her way over to the control room with Nantion following behind her. Are you going to be sending this place to the rift now? Nantion asked as she had spoken to him about that when they were resting. MN, I don't know how much damage Rokarn will cause during the fight. With Een and Estrella's help, I'll be able to send the entirety of Asharia to the rift where it'll be safe. Een has already done her part, so now it's up to me and Estrella. I'll be honest, we haven't even come close to transporting something as big as this into the rift, but first time for everything. Though there might be some shaking as though we're having an earthquake. Shiro shrugged while opening the doors to the command room. Clearing her throat, she grabbed a mic and linked herself to the public announcement system. Ahem, this is Shiro speaking. We will shortly be experiencing some heavy shaking, so I advise everyone to stop what you are doing and look around you. You will notice an emergency seat being constructed nearby that will secure you in place to avoid any injuries. If there are not enough seats, press the red tab on the armrest, and another will be created. The shaking will last for roughly 5 minutes. Finishing her sentence, Shiro put down the mic and cut off the connection. Everyone in the control room can stay where you are. I'll adjust your seats. Shiro called out as the people working in the room nodded their heads and resumed what they were doing. Nantion, I want you to keep an eye on the city status while I teleport this place with Estrella. It'll be hard for me to shift my attention elsewhere, so if there is a part that's going into the red, tell me and I'll fix it. MN, got it. Nantion nodded while sitting down in front of the control terminal. Opening a portal, Shiro teleported to the top of the tower. Estrella, it's time. Materializing next to her, Estrella nodded her head while preparing a Tier 6 magic circle. With Estrella beginning her preparations, Shiro conjured up several holographic panels along with a Tier 7 magic circle that started to expand over the whole of Asharia. The anchor that was stationed within her tower started to shine as golden runes appeared around the city. Clasping her hands together, a portal started to open in front of Asharia. Sweat dripped down Estrella's face as keeping a portal of this size open was not easy. The bigger it became, the more mana it consumed. However, that burden soon disappeared as Shiro started to transfer her mana to Estrella. Looking at the size of the portal, Shiro knew that it was not big enough yet. Focus your mind, Estrella. Don't worry about mana usage. I have that covered. Just make it a little bigger, and I'll take it from there. Hearing this, Estrella nodded her head. Once the portal was big enough, Shiro activated her Tier 7 magic circle and hijacked the portal. With the burden now off her shoulders, Estrella looked towards Shiro, who was completely composed. Countless pillars crafted from hundreds of Tier 6 magic circles held the portal in place as Shiro started to control the city. Making it fly through the portal, it felt as though an earthquake was happening. Securing herself to the roof, Shiro continued to push the city through. Her mana drained at a visible pace, and not even her Regan could keep up. Drinking mana potions one after the other, it took 8 potions before she could finally squeeze Asharia into the rift. Immediately stopping the portal, Shiro sat down and panted heavily. Conjuring up a mic, she linked herself to the public announcement system once more. This is Shiro speaking. I apologize for how long that took. The shaking is now over, and you may resume what you were doing. Thank you for your cooperation. Dismissing the mic, Shiro massaged her neck. Looking up at the black and purple sky of the rift, Shiro decided to add some extra protection just in case. Setting it so that the city will automatically be sent out of the void and teleported to a safe location should it be the target of an attack. Shiro turned towards Estrella. When we fight, are you able to seal off the area so that no one can teleport out? That way, we can reduce the chances of them wreaking havoc on Earth. Shiro asked as Estrella thought about it for a moment. It depends. My expertise lies in sending them to my dimension. Unless I'm dragging everyone into my realm, it'll be hard. Estrella admitted as Shiro furrowed her brows. Then what about me trapping them in my realm and you stopping them from leaving? Shiro asked as Estrella didn't have the capabilities of transporting that many people just yet. I'm not sure. Estrella sighed helplessly. Well, no matter. When I drag them into my throne world, they'll be more focused on surviving than trying to find a way out. If they're distracted, I'll end them. Shiro shrugged while standing up. Anyways, let's go. Everyone will be ready in a few moments. Shiro smiled as the two of them disappeared. ####. Are you not worried about what's happening on Earth right now? Hades asked as Gaia turned towards him. Of course I'm worried. Shiro will be facing someone that could push back the primordials after all. However, I trust that she'll be able to hold her own. What we need to do right now is to take care of Zeus and the others. Gaia shook her head as Hades agreed. Meanwhile, sitting by the side, Mio had a worried expression on her face. It's been a while since she's gone back to Earth. As much as she wanted to go back, she couldn't. After all, she was now a demigod and had to wait until the second half of the New Age. Unlike the gods and primordials, her body would not be able to handle the backlash of descending to Earth. Mio LVL 1000 Demigod of Reapers, Divinity 1. Don't worry too much. Your daughter is strong. Nyx smiled while sitting opposite her. Seeing what Mio looked like, she had to admit that it was no wonder Shiro was beautiful. I know, but a mother can't help but worry. I hope that when I go back, I can lighten her burden. Seeing her take everything by herself is stressful. I don't know when there will suddenly be a day where she just breaks down like before. No parent who cares for their child wants to see them like that. Not me nor my husband, and especially not her friends. Mio smiled while thinking back to how hard Lyrica, Madison, and the others worked in order to keep up with Shiro. True, if the need arises, I will manifest myself on Earth to give her a hand. Even if we lose this battle here, we need to keep Shiro alive after all. Nyx reassured with a smile. Amen. Nodding her head, Mio was about to say something when everyone stopped what they were doing. Immediately standing up, they looked towards the sky. Asterisk Kish. Lightning flickered through the clouds as a single figure appeared. His aura flared out without reservation while looking down at the gods that had gathered. Zeus LVL 1000 God of Sky and Thunder, Divinity 2. Zeus, you have quite the guts to face us. Nyx shouted out as the skies darkened. I've won the war once before. I can win it again, Nyx. Zeus said with narrowed his eyes. Slamming his hands together, a tier 8 magic circle appeared around his arms as a giant lightning bolt crackled in his hand. Pulling his arm back, he launched it towards the group. Let me deal with this. Mio narrowed her eyes. Flicking from her spot, she appeared in the sky as black and red energy wrapped around her sword. A red glow appeared in her eyes as she activated a tier 7 magic circle. Suddenly, her sword transformed into a giant scythe and cleaved the lightning bolt in half. Clenching his fist, Zeus scattered the lightning bolt and fired them all at Mio. Sword skill, impenetrable defense. The upgraded version of her original sword skill that allowed her to block an attack as long as she could see and act against it. Twirling the scythe in her hands, she cleaved apart the lightning bolt and transformed into a swirl of black energy that dashed towards Zeus. I heard that you were quite insulting towards my daughter when you met on Mount Olympus. Mio narrowed her eyes as Zeus blocked her scythe with his arm guard. So what? A mere mortal dared to talk back to a god. I was quite lenient by just insulting her. I should have killed her there and then. Zeus scoffed. However, just as he said this, all of the primordials appeared around him. Gaia's face was cold, and so was Nyx's. Twisting her body, Gaia slammed her fist against Zeus' body, sending him flying through the skies as the other gods belonging to his faction appeared and charged towards them. In a single moment, all hell broke loose as tier 8 spells were thrown left and right. With everyone now ready, Shiro opened a portal to the space station and transported everyone away from Asharia. Looking out the window of the station, those that had never gone to space couldn't help but watch in awe. Despite all the harm that had befallen the planet in the last few months, it was still a beautiful sight to behold. It's beautiful, Li Jian muttered as this was the place that he's been trying to protect with his hidden sect. It is, and Rokarn seeks to destroy it. Let's stop that from happening. Shiro smiled as Li Jian nodded his head. Waving her hand, masks appeared in front of everyone. These are the masks that will keep you alive out there. They each have their own charge of grace, but it's only one charge. It won't activate until all other charges of grace have been used up. It also doubles as a tracker so that I can teleport you back should anything happen. Unlike Earth, if you get hit hard, you will drift into the dark beyond. If I don't have this tracker, I don't know if I can find you again, so you must keep it on. If it breaks or fractures, you can insert some mana and it'll fix itself. Shiro explained while putting on a mask herself. The main station housing the 20 charges of grace will be camouflaged, so don't worry too much if you see one of the weapon stations being destroyed. They're mostly decoys. There isn't much else to say other than I hope that everyone will keep their guard up. Shiro smiled as they all nodded. Putting on masks, Shiro led them to the airlock and closed the door. In space, just fly as usual, but you don't need as much mana to propel yourself. Too much and you'll go flying. Just remember that. Try to adapt first before going full power. Giving them one last reminder, Shiro opened the hatch just as the barriers surrounding the moon faded. Seeing the countless portals that opened up, the party couldn't help but swallow their saliva nervously while Cyrodiil could feel her blood pumping in excitement. God Slayer, I have given you enough time to prepare. Are you ready to face my army? Rokarn's voice boomed out as they could see a giant, illusionary figure clad in black armor towering over all of them. Without hesitation, Shiro released her own aura as golden lights wrapped around everyone. While I do wish I had more time, Rokarn, this will be your burial ground. I've slain gods before, and you too shall fall to my blade. Shiro shouted back. Summoning Sylvanes, golden runes appeared on the blade as a red aura erupted from her body. Pulling back her arm, she slashed towards the portal and destroyed tens of them in a single swing. Charge! Shiro shouted out as both Li Jian and Koji dashed forward. Tier 6 magic circles wrapped around their body as black and gold armor materialized around them. Summoning his sword, Koji looked towards the army that was spilling forth from the portals like black mist. The sheer number dwarfed any war he was part of in his prime. Darling, I'll look after our daughter in this fight. If they wish to slay her, they'll have to do so after killing me. Koji thought to himself as he took a deep breath. Face me, you monstrosities. A pulse of energy exploded out as all of them turned towards him. Charging forth, energy condensed towards his sword. Conjuring up his avatar, he swung his sword and cleaved a bloody path through the ranks before the blade was stopped by a muscular monster that wielded 2 giant axes. Don't get too eager now. It'll be more work for the Sylvia lass to keep us alive. Li Jian shouted out as he dashed along Koji's blade. Materializing an avatar for himself, he carried a great sword on his back, while golden energy wrapped around his fist. Punching out, an oriental dragon shot out and slammed into the body of the berserker. Swallowing him, the dragon continued to ravage through the ranks before exploding in a shower of energy that burned anything it touched. With the two of them leading the charge, Sylvia was given more than enough time to finish her chant. Slamming her staff down, hundreds upon hundreds of Tier 6 magic circles appeared around her as the party was powered up by her buffs. From the distance, the mages of Rokarn's armor launched spells towards her, but before they could hit, Revel intercepted its course. Blocking it with his wing, lightning surged through his body. Fear me, for I am the storm Leviathan. Hear my thunder and quiver. Revel roared as lightning shot out from his body. Asterisk, bang. In a single instant, a large chunk of Rokarn's army was incinerated before the gap was refilled. *TCH please. When were serpents and dragons better than phoenixes? You see dragons all the time, but when do you see someone like me? Een laughed as she flew high into the sky. Black energy wrapped around her body as a set of wings unfurled themselves. The Lord of Gluttony reveals herself. Seeing the system notification, many within the ranks of Rokarn's army felt their hearts stop, as there were few who would warrant a notification such as this. Seeing the giant form of the phoenix reveal herself, they could not react before darkness swallowed them. Asterisk key. Letting out a cry, shadows swallowed monster after monster, turning them into streams of energy that surged towards Een, whose aura grew with each kill. Behind her, Lysandra appeared with her wings unfurled and 2 golden swords in her hand. Normally I would tell you to eat less, big sis, but this is a banquet. Lysandra laughed as her lips curled up into a smile. Transforming into an orb of light, her figure enlarged. Giant angelic wings unfurled behind her as some were black, but it created a strange balance. Yin and yang, darkness and light. One of Lysandra's swords was black like the void, while the other was radiant like the sun. Combining both into a great sword, she cleaved through the army like a butcher. Whenever one of the units was about to explode, a needle would suddenly appear in their place, halting their self-destruction. With everyone revealing their flashy moves, Shiro controlled the battlefield and allowed no harm to reach her allies. Her eyes darted from place to place, analyzing and reacting to every little thing that happened. Besides her, Misu had her eyes closed. Tier 6 magic circles stacked on top of one another as howling souls swirled around her. Usually, she would avoid having to go such lengths with her power. After all, she used to be a cleric. Summoning the undead was considered heresy. However, if committing heresy means saving the peace that Shiro had brought to the millions of people that live in Asharia, she was okay with that. Slamming her hand down, black and green mist exploded out with her in the center. Within this mist, the souls slowly faded away before being resurrected as skeletons or powerful undead such as liches. Heed my word, army of the dead. Charge forth and bring an end to the living. Misu commanded coldly as black runes engraved themselves onto their bodies, wiping out their consciousness so that she could use their souls for the power they hold. With an undead army now following behind them, the numbers were slowly balancing out. Watching everything happen, Rokarn still had a frown on his face. The Godslayer was not performing as he had expected. When he sent the army, he had hoped to see a hail of holy fire that shredded everything to pieces. He so dearly hoped that he would see her former radiance, but he was left disappointed. "Show me your power, Godslayer, or else I will consume all in chaos," Rokarn shouted out. Summoning his greatsword, a Tier 8 magic circle appeared above the battlefield as a magnified version of his blade slammed down towards Een. Bang! Crashing against a barrier that Shiro created, Een took this time to get out of the way. Ping! Shattering to pieces, the barrier didn't even last a second as the blade slammed into Misu's undead army, slaying those that had died for a second time only for them to reconstruct themselves. Meanwhile, cold sweat dripped down Shiro's face as Rokarn's attack had almost reached her through the mana she used to construct that blade. Had she kept it up for longer, a sword wound would no doubt appear on her chest. "Sylvia, give me and Cyrodiil a buff. We're charging in," Shiro ordered as Sylvia nodded her head. Closing her eyes, she started to chant her strongest buff while Shiro dashed beside Cyrodiil. "Let's go." Without saying anything, Cyrodiil transformed herself into a flaming dragon while Shiro activated her Soul Maiden skill. Using the element of fire, the two charged through the army unhindered as one of Rokarn's commanders appeared before the two of them. The commander that stood in front of them wielded two great swords and was donned in crimson armor. He stood roughly 10 foot tall with a hulking physique. "Mithra LVL 900 Ascendant Guardian. You will not approach my master while I stand," he shouted out as a pulse of red energy shot out of his body. Bang! Slamming into both Shiro and Cyrodiil, they realized that this aura made it so that it was hard for them to move unless it was towards Mithra. A taunt spell. "Cyrodiil, let's take care of him quickly," Shiro whispered as Cyrodiil nodded her head. However, just as she said this, a figure flickered next to her. "No need. I'll deal with him." Keiko smiled as Shiro stared at her for a moment. Seeing the confidence in her eyes, Shiro nodded her head. "Then you might need some extra firepower." Tapping Keiko's shoulder, golden runes appeared on her daggers. "Go get him." Shiro smiled as Keiko disappeared. "Let's keep charging," Shiro said as she corrected her order. Activating a Tier 6 magic circle, Cyrodiil narrowed her eyes and increased her speed. Just as Mithra was about to intercept them, his shadow twisted, revealing Keiko who had teleported beneath him. Kish. Slashing both of his hells, black and gold runes spread through his body. Cursed markings could be seen spreading from the wound as he widened his eyes and glared at Keiko. Before he could do anything, she stabbed her daggers into his thigh. Using them as handles, she launched herself towards his head. Summoning two new daggers while his body was being locked down by the runes, she stabbed her new daggers into his neck. Twisting her body, she frowned as she realized she lacked the strength to twist of his head. However, her worries were short-lived as a sword made from light slammed against one side of the dagger. Pucci. Twisting Mithra's head 360 degrees in an instant, Keiko glanced back and saw Nantion. Realizing that he must have thrown the sword to give her an extra hand while covering Shiro's back, Keiko chuckled and slammed her foot into Mithra's shoulder. Ripping the head off his body, she threw it behind her as the skill slowing both Shiro and Cyrodiil down disappeared. "You can't kill me so easily," Mithra shouted out in rage as flesh exploded from his wounds. Creating a second body for himself, his old body grew a new head as there was now two Mithras on the battlefield. "Well, if we can't kill you so easily, then we'll just have to kill you over and over again." Aram laughed as she clasped her hands together. Separating them, two black holes could be seen in her palms. Aiming it towards the two bodies of Mithra, Tier 6 magic circles surrounded his body as reality started to twist, pushing the two black holes towards one another slowly. Aram watched as Mithra's body started to collapse from within. With one final twist, one of the generals was now nothing but a shredded pile of flesh that was soon consumed by the black hole. Seeing as how one of their generals was killed with such ease, the monsters had the thought of abandoning this war. However, between these people and Rokarn, they feared the demigod of chaos more. Gritting their teeth with tears in their eyes, they roared as loudly as they could to muster the last bit of courage they had left. However, That courage soon left them as they looked up into the sky. Now in his human form with draconic armor, Revel hovered above the battlefield with a giant magic circle that was slowly trying to reach threshold of Tier 7. A strange energy twisted around his body as it was unfamiliar to most of the monsters. It was not mana, nor was it the divine energy of their leader. Revel LVL 999, Celestial Leviathan of Storms. After reaching a certain mastery over the celestial energy that Shiro introduced to him, Revel finally broke past the bottleneck that stopped him from reaching the peak of Tier 6. With it came a class upgrade that allowed him to use celestial energy freely. Even if he can't use mana, he now had a new source of energy to fuel his spells. Opening his eyes, his aura exploded out as the Tier 6 magic circle opened a portal to a new dimension. Dark clouds spilled forth as it loomed over the army. Raising his hand, celestial energy coiled around Revel's body as his eyes were cold. Slamming his hand down, Armageddon ensued as lightning leviathans shot out from the clouds, killing hundreds to thousands with each leviathan that descended from the portal. However, before he could continue wreaking havoc, Een appeared beneath his portal and started to eat his attack. Blinking his eyes in confusion, Revel looked at Een to stuck her tongue out at him and continued eating. "Stop taking my show. Let me show you something cool." Een laughed. With lightning now coursing through her body, she spread out her wings and surrounded a large portion of the army in a wall of flames and lightning that twisted together. Activating several Tier 6 magic circles, the wall instantly collapsed in, killing anything and everything in its path before being condensed to a single orb. Learning from Shiro's many demonstrations of her bombs, Yin's eyes lit up with sadistic joy as she transformed back to her human self. Aiming her hand towards the orb, she curled her lips into grin and snapped her finger. Asterisk, boom. Exploding the moment Een snapped her finger, a wave of pure energy wiped out hundreds of thousands and didn't seem like it was going to stop. Crashing against a barrier that Shiro activated, a hologram of Shiro appeared in front of Een. "I know you're excited, but don't hurt our allies now." Shiro smiled as Een scratched her head embarrassingly. "When will you let Addy play, Mom? He must be getting bored." Een asked as Shiro gave her a knowing look. "You know he'll be having plenty of fun once I reach the center of their army." "True, but I'm sure he wants to get out now and have some fun before that. You know, appetizers." Een shrugged. "Give one more food reference, and I'll be having chicken tonight." Shiro rolled her eyes. "Well, call me a cannibal, but I rather enjoy the taste of chicken and birds. If we're having chicken, I'll go look for a big one back on Earth so that I can cook it." Een licked her lips as Shiro was speechless. In the short time that she looked away, it seems like Een had become more shameless than before, though Shiro had to admit that Een was always shameless when it came to food. Shaking her head, Shiro ended the call. "Cyrodiil, don't worry about damage. I'll heal everything and give you a speed boost. Just get us to the center, then I'll have Addy clear them out." Shiro smiled as lightning started to flicker through Sarati's body. Transforming into a lightning dragon that focused on speed, she disappeared into a flash of light. Before anyone realized, Shiro and Cyrodiil was now in the center of their army that was spilling through the portals. Jumping off Sarati's back, Shiro slammed her hand down and brought both Addy and Estrella out of her mana realm. "I'm finally out." Addy smiled as he stretched his body. "Is it finally time to try out that new thing we talked about, Mom?" he asked as Shiro nodded her head. "Yep, get ready." Activating her Soul Maiden skill, she changed her element to Void Star. Waving her hand, several Tier 7 magic circles appeared around her as black energy started to surround everything. Snapping her finger, the surroundings cleared up as the army soon realized that they were trapped within Shiro's throne world. Strange twists of energy surrounded them as they looked around in confusion. Slowly, a portal opened above them as light filled the realm, shielding their eyes. They looked up and saw that it was a portal revealing the sun. In front of the sun, a single figure could be seen. Flames wrapped around his body as he had a demonic smile on his face. Little by little, the temperature started to drop as all of the heat was being absorbed by Atesh. Ice started to form on their bodies as the temperature continued to drop. No matter what spells they tried to cast, the magic circle would be erased by an invisible force. Once they were completely restrained by the ice that formed on their body, Atesh opened his mouth. In a flash, his flames turned white. Asterisk, boom. Unable to fully contain the power of Atesh's attack, the throne world started to crack apart as rays of light slipped past the border. Outside of the throne world, The army looked at the orb of darkness in confusion as it swallowed a majority of their army. Soon, cracks started to form before erupting with blinding rays of light that cut through the darkness of space. Reality started to wrap from the heat, as some even had all of their moisture evaporated before touching the light, drying up into lifeless husks. They turned to ash that drifted through the cold nothingness of space. Once the barrier to the realm disappeared, half of the army could no longer be seen as millions were killed in an instant. Seeing half of his army get eradicated, Rokarn was silent. His fist tightened around the grip of his sword. The God-Slayer was demonstrating her power, but it was not enough. After knowing what Arya did, he was glad to see that she was this powerful, but alas, it still wasn't enough. Should he fulfill their promise, the God-Slayer would die. Show me more. Show me your power. Rokarn thought to himself. At this point, his inner voice was close to begging. All units, by the name of Rokarn, lay down your life and bring chaos. Rokarn shouted out, pointing his sword towards Shiro's party. Suddenly, purple aura exploded out of the monsters as each of them seemed to lose their mind. Charging forth without care for their safety, spells were hurled at random. Crashing against the multitude of layers that both Shiro and Sylvia had laid down, fractures started to form. Surprised by their attack, Shiro turned her gaze towards the mages that were casting spells. Chunyu, prepare yourself, Shiro shouted out over the mic. Before Chunyu could even respond, he realized that he was now thrown into the group of mages that were about to break the barrier. TSK, at least give me more than a second to prepare. Chunyu complained as he summoned his dagger. Mutilating the first mage he saw, he stepped on their body and propelled himself to the next. While Chunyu was slaughtering the mages, Shiro reinforced the barrier. Addy, I want you to help your grandpa and Li Jian. Keep them safe with Nimue. We won't charge at Rokarn just yet since he seems content with just watching for now. Let him watch. We'll get rid of his army and focus him down later. Shiro asked as water materialized near her. Transforming into Nimue, the two disappeared from their spot and made their way towards Koji. With two of them protecting her father and Li Jian, Shiro turned her focus towards the monsters who felt the most dangerous. Seeing several figures viewing the battle as though they were generals, three of which charged towards Shiro. I'll help you deal with them, Cyrodiil said as Shiro nodded her head. Transforming back into her humanoid self, she was about to attack when a figure appeared in front of her. No, you won't. You'll be dealing with someone else. Widening her eyes, Cyrodiil raised her arm to block the monster's fist. Just as Shiro was about to interfere, a swirling black spear blocked her path. Immediately backing off since her instincts were telling her that the spear was bad news, Shiro turned towards the one who threw that spear. Before she could even quip about his armor or looks, two others charged at her. Immediately summoning two swords to parry their attacks, Shiro was forced to take a few steps back. Damn, you guys are really ruthless, huh? I suppose you don't like the fact that I helped kill your friends. Shiro forced a smile while slamming her hand down. However, before she could cast anything, she felt something restricting her body and stopped her spell. Widening her eyes, she looked past the two that were now charging towards her and saw a small figure staring at her with one eye open. He had his fingers in a frame that pointed at her. Must be a skill that seals the movement and prevents spells from activating, Shiro thought with a frown. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro reached into her inventory and pulled out several pre-prepared needles that she had just in case. If there was a situation where she had to avoid someone detecting the fact that she was using mana, she would use these needles that she made before. Stabbing one of the needles into her body, all mana within and around her disappeared. With the spell forcefully broken, the mage at the back paused in shock. Before he could call the two others back, Shiro removed the needle and started to regenerate her mana. Adjusting her grip, Shiro activated Soul Maiden and used her lightning element. Twisting her body, her two blades cleaved into the bodies of the generals. Just as the mage was about to reactivate his spell, Shiro flicked her wrist and sent a needle towards his eye. Quickly ducking down to avoid the needle, he watched as she grabbed the right arm of one of the generals and dislocated it with a kick to the armpit. Flipping back, she avoided the attack of the second general and grabbed his head. Narrowing her eyes, she exploded a pocket of mana behind her in order to increase her speed. Reinforcing her body, she slammed her knee into his spine, snapping it in half. Poochie. Nanobots exploded out from his stomach as they had chewed through his body the moment slammed her knee into his back. Latching onto the first general that had his arm dislocated, The nanobots shredded him to pieces. In the short moment it took him to dodge the needle, Shiro had killed 2 of his comrades. Taking a step back, he clasped his hands together, and chains appeared around Shiro, holding her in place. Is this what you call a control spell? Shiro stared at him with cold eyes. Little by little, her blonde hair that was a result of her soul maiden form turned white as cold mist spread out with Shiro in the center. Ping. Breaking apart the chains with ease, Shiro massaged her wrist and aimed her finger at the mage. Suddenly, his instincts were overwhelmed with the urge to run as he turned around. However, just as he did, he realized he could no longer feel his arms or legs. Looking down, he saw that everything but his torso and head was frozen in place. Grabbing his head, Shiro didn't say anything and shattered to pieces. Turning towards Rokarn, who was staring at her, Shiro frowned. Surely he would be making a move by now. Why is he still watching? Shiro thought to herself. Forming a knife with her hand, she swung her arm down and killed the assassin that snuck up next to her without even looking at him. Godslayer, how do you fare against a single move of mine? Rokarn asked as he slowly raised his hand, slamming it down. A myriad of Tier 7 magic circles surrounded Shiro. Widening her eyes, she felt the grip of death around her neck. Slamming her hand down, her own Tier 7 magic circle expanded as hundreds of swords shot out, each enchanted with a rune that shuts down spells. Ping. Seeing that each sword would shatter upon contact, Shiro widened her eyes in shock. If her swords were destroyed, that meant he had a spell that canceled attacks as well. With that protecting the Tier 7 magic circles, it was going to be hard for her to stop it. As the spell was about to activate, Shiro decided to gamble. Summoning Sylvanes, she reinforced her body with mana. Activating analysis to improve her perception of this spell, Shiro focused her mind. Remembering her spar with her mother, Shiro knew that this was a good chance for her to improve before her confrontation against Rokarn. Sure, there were a few other ways she could get out of this situation that she had in mind. One being canceling the spell from the outside using her nanobots, but she needed to improve as much as she could. She knew that there was only about a 15% chance of them defeating Rokarn as they are. Just as the spell activated, she swung Sylvanes. At the same time, her eyes scanned the magic circles that composed this spell. Pushing her mind to the limit, time seemed to slow down around her as she simulated the possible locations of the attacks. If a normal person could see what she was seeing right now, they would be overwhelmed by how many possible points of attacks there were. There was not a single gap where she could look for safety. However, her enhanced perception and analysis of the spell allowed her to pick out on which magic circle activated the fastest. While she may not be able to completely defend herself, there was a chance for her to use the spell protection against itself. There, Ping. Deflecting the first strike, Shiro flicked 2 needles through that gap and smiled. Exploding that needle to make an empty area within this zone, she teleported to that gap and parried the next attack. Throwing another needle through the gap that she created, Shiro continued to repeat this process during the entire bombardment. While she was avoiding most of the strikes, she was still suffering some unavoidable damage, but it was better than getting skewered completely. Meanwhile, Rokarn watched Shiro's every action, her perception, her speed, and reaction. It was improving. While it may not be as tyrannical as she had been in the past, it was a good start. Previously, she would use pure strength to overwhelm everyone, which stopped her from refining her techniques. However, she was now refining her techniques before gaining the necessary strength. Slowly, the corner of his lips curled up into a smile. Throwing one last needle, Shiro escaped the attack unharmed. Looking towards Rokarn, she felt a sting of pain in her eyes along with a system notification. Analysis is upgraded to EX status. Quickly glancing at the newly upgraded Analysis EX, it basically allowed her to view everything in slow motion if she wanted to, though she couldn't use it for long periods at a time since it overexerts her eyes. Shaking her head, the pain disappeared as her passive regeneration healed the damage. This isn't good. If Rokarn attacks anyone else, it'll turn the tides of this war. Shiro thought to herself with a frown. Even if she had several charges of grace ready to be used, she still wasn't arrogant as to think that she is able to protect everyone against Rokarn. I need to end this army so that everyone can focus their attention on Rokarn. Estrella, send everyone back to the station. I'll activate defense systems. Right now I'm going to blow everything away. Shiro shouted out as she clasped her hands together and released a wave of cold mist, freezing everyone except for the party members. Shiro closed her eyes and simulated what she wanted to know. Knowing the defenses of some generals here, she could probably use the void bomb and kill everything. But more portals were being opened, filling the gaps in the army. Understanding that she probably needed something more so that it would wipe out the planet connecting to the portals, Shiro had an idea. It might be overkill, but it could potentially harm Rokarn. Slamming her hand down, a giant Tier 7 array expanded from her spot. Summoning Sylvanes, Shiro stabbed it into the center of the array and powered it using the Tier 8 magic circles that they had carved onto the blade. Sensing the eruption of divine energy from her body, Rokarn stared at her curiously. He wondered if she expected him to let her activate whatever skill she wanted without care. Even if he was going to help her improve, this was not the way. Drawing his sword, he sent a wave of energy crashing towards her. Before it could even touch her, shadows twisted together and swallowed the attack. While it could not absorb all of it, the energy that it could not absorb was drained away by the runes that were in the array. With Yin being the 7 sin gluttony, Shiro obtained the skill Devour, which was weaker than Yin's gluttony. However, it was still good enough since it gave her the extra push that she needed. Rokarn, I dare you to take this head on. Shiro taunted as a portal opened up above her. Slowly, a giant crystal could be seen descending from the portal. After their investigations in the north, they found out that as long as they continued to provide life energy, the crystal sprouting from the body would increase in size. By sending every monster that they killed to the crystal graveyard, they created something that was half the size of Asharia. Raising her hand, nanobots appeared and started to carve runes into the surface. While he didn't know what she wanted to do, Rokarn wanted to see how she'd defend this. Slamming his hand down, the ice that restricted his army shattered in an instant. Charge, Rokarn commanded while launching several energy blades towards Shiro. Just as Shiro was about to counter, she saw 2 shadows shoot past her and recognized that it was Yin and Addy. Estrella, I thought I told you to teleport them away. Shiro frowned. Well, I can do that, or we can help you out. I know what you're worried about, but I've marked everyone and can teleport them out with a snap of a finger. If you can finish this new bomb of yours, great. If it self-destructs before it is finished, I'll teleport everyone. Estrella smiled as Shiro scratched her head. Fine, everyone, cover me while I focus on this. Shiro ordered as everyone rejoined the battle while Shiro focused on carving runes into the crystal. Need a hand? Nantion asked as Shiro thought about it, but shook her head. I'm making a planet. I have it handled. Shiro smiled as Nantion raised his eyebrow. You're making a planet? Yup. Well, a planet is not accurate. I'm making an orb of nanobots that will simulate the sun. What do you think would happen if I was to condense then collapse said simulated sun with this giant crystal amplifying everything? Shiro asked as Nantion paused in realization. I see. If you want to do that, then I suggest probably further condensing it to increase its power against a single being. Nantion smiled. I'll keep that in mind. With everyone now protecting her back, Shiro's lips curled up into a smile while she focused on creating this giant light bulb. Closing her eyes, she simulated a weapon that could harness the power of a collapsing star. While she was not the best at creation, she was quite experienced in destruction. She couldn't create a big sun, so the crystal would help her amplify everything. I need to be able to harness everything in a single weapon. While I have the attunement of Void Star and Aspect of Fire, I don't think that's enough for a weapon that can harm Rokarn. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro decided to carve a certain crest onto the crystal. It was a crest that Gaia had shown her during their spare time when learning about the icons of other gods. The icon of the mighty sun belonging to Helios. Opening her eyes, she flared her divine energy and fueled the crystal, allowing it to be amplified and redirected to the crest. Suddenly, the next thing she knew, she was in a white space with a single person in front of her. His stature was huge with his upper torso completely exposed. Red markings wrapped around his body before gathering on his back to form the icon of a sun. He had long blonde hair that was like the mane of a grand lion, pride radiating from his eyes as he stared at her. Crossing his arms, he sat down. Despite his pride, he had heard much about Shiro, the Tier 6 legend that killed a god, one who forced Nyx to stop her attack by order of the system, and the one that the primordials support. Helios LVL 1000, the sun god, divinity 2. I'm a busy god, and you should know that a war is happening, demigod. Gaia has told you this much, no? However, as it is you, I will grant you the audience that you desire. So tell me, what caused you to carve my crest despite the myriad of other gods you can call upon? Helios asked with a smile. I seek your power to create a mighty sun. Shiro answered truthfully as Helios raised his eyebrow. Is that all you want? If you desire a mighty sun, can you not take one from the known galaxy? Helios asked as he pinched the air in front of him and plucked out a sun. Realizing that he must have condensed it down into the size of a marble without any signs of exploding, Shiro was impressed by his control over his divinity. Yes, but I will not be able to use my nanobots as a catalyst since the sun has already formed. I believe you are acquainted with Argus, right? Indeed, the All-Seer has boasted to me about your creation in his name. Perhaps you are planning the same for me? Helios asked with expectation in his eyes. Perhaps. What do you think about helping with the creation of a weapon that can push back the primordials? Shiro offered as Helios burst into laughter. All right, sure. What do you need me to do? I will spare as much power as I can, demigod. Show me the creation you seek to create. Before she knew it, Shiro was now back in space and Helios' crest now shone brightly on her arm. Chuckling softly, Shiro turned towards Estrella. Help me out a little. I wouldn't want to engulf the Earth or the Moon, Shiro said as Estrella teleported next to her, transforming the Tier 7 magic circle beneath them. She teleported everyone to the far reaches of space, where neither the Earth or the Moon could be seen by anyone. Realizing that she used divine energy in that teleportation to even force him through, Rokarn was impressed. However, if she teleported him, then the usage of divine energy must have been huge. And yet, she was flaring an unending stream of divine energy that fueled the crystal. Narrowing his eyes, he noticed that it had a different property than usual. This one was volatile like the sun, a sun god, Rokarn muttered. In the next moment, the crystal flew up into the sky and suddenly exploded with nanobots. Transforming into a giant sphere of metal, Helios' crest erupted out in flames that caused Addie to flinch from the heat. Snapping her finger, Shiro had Estrella help her teleport everyone away so that they were safe from the next attack. In her mind, Shiro had finalized the blueprint and added the name. Sunbreaker Spear, Helios. Clasping her hands together, Tier 8 magic circles started to appear across the surface of the nanotech sun. Flames erupted out from the gaps, and Helios' crest burned brightly within the fire. Before Rokarn could even do anything, Shiro activated the runes in her eyes, allowing her to see the threads of time. Gritting her teeth, she sped up the collapse of her miniature sun. In an instant, the light disappeared, leaving only Helios' crest on the surface. Asterisk crack. Fracturing the shell, the nanotech sun started to collapse as Shiro teleported herself out of the area. Widening his eyes, Rokarn could sense the power within that shell and knew that only he would survive. He was a fighter. His barriers would not be able to protect his army from destruction. Immediately making a choice and activating a barrier around himself, he watched as a ray of light escaped from the fractures on the shell, enveloping everything in a blinding ray of light. He watched as his army disintegrated in a single moment, leaving just him behind. Asterisk ping. Shattering apart the barrier, the heat seared his skin and armor, but he was still alive. Helios' power is indeed strong. However, it is not enough, Rokarn thought to himself as he spotted a black shadow within the light. Realizing that it was Shiro, a bad feeling suddenly appeared in his heart. Reaching into the void, Shiro slowly pulled out a spear as all of the energy started draining away from her surroundings. Grabbing the spear with both her hands, Shiro activated the Helios crest, and Tier 8 magic circles appeared on the spear tip. While the power of a god with divinity too might not kill Rokarn, having that power amplified by the might of a dying star along with the crystal may just work. Adjusting her posture, Shiro glared at Rokarn. A blazing spear with the might of a collapsing star now within her hands. She dashed forwards and threw the spear. Suddenly, tens of magic circles appeared in front of the spear, increasing its power and size with each one it traveled through. Bypassing the final magic circle, the avatar of Helios appeared holding the amplified spear. Grabbing his own great sword, Rokarn widened his eyes and swung towards the mighty avatar. Dark energy coursed through his arm and into the sword, revealing a set of black runes that only lasted for a moment. However, that was enough for Shiro to capture with her eyes and memorize their appearance. Asterisk bang. As the two attacks clashed with one another, a pulse of energy exploded out as Shiro was forced to escape into her portal before it killed her. However, the energy still slammed into her back as she was catapulted through the opening just as it closed. Seeing Shiro's body launch through the portal, Nantion quickly caught her before she could fly any further. A horrifying burn wound could be seen on her back, as not even her immunity to fire could stop this. Quickly healing Shiro using Sylvia's magic, they sighed in relief seeing that there were no long-lasting effects. Don't relax just yet, he's still alive. Shiro spoke with a frown while standing back up. Glancing back at the moon, Shiro could see that Rokarn's raid gate had been completely destroyed since the portals that brought in his army were created within the gate. With the power of a collapsing star erupting through the portal, it was no surprise that the world within the gate was destroyed along with the gate. Just as Shiro was about to say something, a dark portal suddenly opened, and a wounded Rokarn stepped through the portal. His armor was broken and blood flowed through the gaps. He was now missing his right arm and a part of his torso. His helmet shattered, revealing his bloodied face and red eyes. Raising his left hand, a Tier 8 magic circle exploded out with him in the center. His flesh twisted and warped before regenerating his arm and healed his wounds. How many more times can you borrow the power of Helios? Rokarn asked as he summoned his greatsword once more. Despite the damage it took while facing the Sunbreaker spear, it was slowly healing itself. Is that everything you have got, Godslayer? Will you continue to borrow the power of those you think are stronger without showing me what you can do? Rokarn shouted out while pointing his sword towards her. What should we do? Nantion whispered as they could attack him right now. However, considering the fact that he was asking Shiro a question, this might be a good time for Shiro to find out more about herself. I'll send a signal for everyone if we need to fight. For now, be on standby. Estrella, prepare to send my dad and Li Jian out of here. They're not safe here, Shiro ordered as she was about to walk towards Rokarn. However, before she could, Koji grabbed her arm. Dad, Shiro glanced back and smiled. It's fine, trust me, she reassured, but Koji sighed. Which father is okay with seeing his daughter fight someone so dangerous? If you're going to fight, at least let your old man help. Sorry, Dad, but let me handle this, okay? Shiro apologized as Koji was forcefully teleported away. She didn't want to risk her dad's life in this fight. Just as she teleported Koji away, Estrella did the same with Li Jian, leaving everyone that was higher than level 750. Everyone had managed to level up during the fight before this stage, but her dad and Li Jian were still too low level. A single swing from Rokarn would kill them both. Walking towards Rokarn, Shiro had a smile on her face. I suppose I should thank you for allowing me to send them away to safety. Shiro chuckled. Whether or not they stay does not matter to me, Godslayer. I only wish to know if this is the extent of your power. Rokarn asked as Shiro shook her head. No, but why do you want to know so much? Last time our talk was cut off, but are you willing to entertain me for a moment? Why are you so concerned with me showing my power? How do you know me, and why do you call me the Godslayer? Shiro asked. Hearing this, Rokarn sighed. It matters not if I say it, because you won't be able to understand regardless. Rokarn shook his head. Opening his mouth, he started to speak, but everything was censored. Shiro was not able to understand a single thing he was saying, nor could she lip read. Furrowing her brows, Shiro contemplated on activating Chaos Blessing so that she could bypass the authority. However, a single notification stopped her. Due to the nature of the situation, Chaos Blessing has been disabled unless used for combat. Pausing in surprise, Shiro didn't expect the system to disable her skill to stop her from finding out. As expected, you cannot hear me. Then I give you 2 tips before the system forces me to fight you once again. Rokarn said as he closed his eyes. Number 1, do not trust Arya. No matter what happens, she is not to be trusted. She has betrayed you once. She can do it again. Number 2, prove to me that you have the capabilities of containing a powerful divinity within your body. Rokarn smiled as Shiro furrowed her brows before nodding. Now go. Know that this is the final break I grant you, Rokarn said as his aura flared. Flying back to the group, Shiro took a deep breath. Cyrodiil, Revel, you two will act as our main tanks. Our plan right now is for us to weaken him enough so that I can use extract on him, Shiro said as they all nodded their heads in seriousness. Shiro had already given them a document on how they should fight together and synergize with one another before coming here, so not much explanation was needed. I'll save my new form for later then. Since you'll be using Divinity too, right? Cyrodiil asked as Shiro nodded her head. Yes. Try to save it just in case, since your body cannot handle the new form for long. Once it expires, you'll be out of commission for the rest of this fight, Shiro warned as Cyrodiil nodded her head. I'll cast a buff on everyone, Sylvia said as Shiro nodded her head. Activating a Tier 6 magic circle, everyone had their stats increased as both Cyrodiil and Revel charged towards Rokarn, transforming into her black crystal dragon form. Cyrodiil's body crashed into Rokarn's, parrying her body with his blade. Rokarn was about to grab her when Revel appeared behind him. He was in his half-leviathan, half-human form with a spiral of lightning energy gathering in his hand. Asterisk bang, slamming it into Rokarn's back. Lightning exploded out and wrapped around his body, restricting his movements. Suddenly, a Tier 6 magic array appeared above the three of them. Activating his spell, Nantion created a sword of light that stabbed down towards the restrained Rokarn. Asterisk ping, shattering the bindings around his body. Rokarn dismissed his weapon and raised his hand. Asterisk bang, crack, blocking the sword. He shattered it to pieces with a single move and launched both Revel and Cyrodiil back, flaring his aura. All of the party members felt their bodies tense up from the aura and knew that he had been holding back. With Rokarn no longer holding back, Shiro felt danger in her heart. Not even the Sunbreaker Spear, enhanced with the power of Helios, could do major damage to him. What hopes would they have? Suddenly, her instincts screamed out in alarm as Rokarn suddenly appeared in front of her with his sword mid-swing. Widening her eyes, Shiro was about to teleport when her body was frozen in place, much like how her skill, Kaitoma, worked. Asterisk bang. Before the sword could land, Nantion appeared in front of her and blocked it with his own blade. Gritting his teeth, he barely managed to hold on for a moment before being blown away by the attack. However, it gave Shiro enough time to get out of the way and avoid a serious blow. Seeing that his attack missed, Rokarn's expression was blank. It was as though his mind was being suppressed, making him a perfect fighting machine, much like the other bosses Shiro saw in dungeons. Before he could target again, Aram created a prison around him that restricted his movements using gravity. Knowing that Aram would struggle, Sylvia had tried to buff her as much as possible in hopes that it would work. But seeing as how he was still moving as usual, Sylvia knew that Aram was too low level to restrain him for long. Forget about restraint. Aram, just focus on damaging him, Sylvia shouted out as Aram nodded. Turning towards Sylvia, Rokarn narrowed his eyes. Realizing that it would be bad for Rokarn to target Sylvia, Cyrodiil quickly jumped in front of Rokarn and pulled her arm back, punching him across the face. She didn't even make him turn his head, causing her smile to twitch. Grabbing Cyrodiil by the head, Rokarn grabbed his blade and stabbed it through her chest. Coughing up a mouthful of blood, Cyrodiil glared at Rokarn and grabbed his arm, keeping his sword in her. Since her healing was strong, this much damage was negligible. Changing her form, flames erupted out of her body, threatening to turn him to cinders. Meanwhile, Revel had charged up a spear of celestial energy. Flickering behind Rokarn, he attempted to stab him in the neck. Pushing out with his spare hand, a barrier appeared around him, stopping Revel in his tracks along with any other spells that they tried to throw at him. Just before Revel could be grabbed by Rokarn, an invisible force pulled him out of harm's way. Thanks, Revel said as he turned towards Aram, who now resorted to controlling the battlefield with her gravity magic. Nodding her head, Aram turned towards Shiro, who was now charging at Rokarn with Sylvanis in hand. Clasping her hands together, a Tier 6 magic circle appeared beneath Shiro's feet as her speed was increased. Sensing danger behind him, he summoned a second greatsword and swung towards Cyrodiil's shoulder. Despite the barriers appearing around her, the blade broke past her defenses and cut cleanly through her. Widening her eyes, she watched as he pulled his first greatsword out of her body and turned towards Shiro. Flames wrapped around her wounds and healed her, but her complexion was not good. She knew that Rokarn was strong. She had witnessed his might many times before. However, there was always something holding him back. The Rokarn she was seeing now was much stronger than what she had anticipated. Understanding that the only person who can really do damage to him was Shiro, Cyrodiil resolved herself to do whatever it takes to keep Shiro safe and allow her to attack him as much as she can. Meanwhile, Shiro flickered in front of Rokarn and swung her blade. Just as he raised his sword to block, Shiro activated Sylvanis' third ability. Effect 3. You can shift your sword through space, and it will jump forward in an instant. If there is a wall, the sword will phase through the wall as though it was never there. Phasing past his defense, Sylvanis cut deeply into his armor and body, much to Rokarn's surprise. Sylvanis' passive ability ignores 80% of all forms of armor. Adjusting her grip on the sword, Shiro pulled her body up, avoiding his horizontal swing. Resummoning Sylvanes, she activated the fourth effect. Effect 4. You can infuse any element with this blade and the effectiveness will be boosted by 2005% and ignores all resistance towards that element. Considering the fact that nanobots are her strongest element, Shiro synced it up with her nanotech attunement. Suddenly, a red hue appeared around her blade as she swung it towards Rokarn's back. However, a portal opened and Rokarn grabbed her by her wrist, dragging her in front of him. He was about to attack when both Cyrodiil and Nantion appeared by his side. Stabbing his sword into Rokarn's ribs, Nantion frowned when he realized that he couldn't bypass his armor. But it wasn't just the two of them. Appearing above him, both Een and Addy were enraged as white flames flickered around their body, combining their flames into the one that even Shiro struggled at extinguishing. Addy created several fire chains that restricted his movement ever so slightly before releasing a wave of fire towards him. In the distance, Estrella, Misu, Aram, and Essel were creating a Tier 6 array that slowly increased in size. While it may not be as impressive as some of Shiro's arrays, the goal was not to attack, but rather summon. Shiro had already helped both Estrella and Misu with improving their magic before the fight. Plus, she had given them a special something in case things were dire. Your body will soon be ready. Estrella spoke as she was currently locked onto his body that Shiro sent to space in a different dimension. Hearing this, the ancient terror chuckled. Perfect. Slamming her hand down, green flames appeared as Misu started to chant in a different language. Black mist and bones started to appear as a portal opened up in the center, allowing the ancient terror's previous body to float through. Seeing the mindless husk that was still alive, the soul of the ancient terror floated towards it as Misu enhanced the link between soul and body. Suddenly, the eyes of the behemoth snapped open with intelligence. Yura, I'm back, motherf asterisk CKR. The ancient terror shouted out in joy as he charged towards Rokarn. Get out of the way. My body is immortal unlike the lot of you, so I'll keep him occupied. Shiro, you should know this firsthand. The ancient terror shouted out as Shiro smiled and nodded her head. Clasping her hands together, portals opened up next to Nantion, Cyrodiil, Een, Addy, and Revel, sending them away from Rokarn so that the ancient terror wouldn't accidentally slam into them. Asterisk bang. Colliding into Rokarn's body, the ancient terror immediately opened his mouth and bit down on his head. Asterisk Poochie. Snapping his jaw, Rokarn glared at the giant behemoth that was grappling him and cleaved his body in two. However, just as he did this, the two halves melded together in an instant. Healing his jaw, the ancient terror laughed. Surprised? Don't be. I'm something the primordials struggled to seal. Opening his chest, tentacles started to explode out of his body as Rokarn's arms were restrained. While this was happening, Shiro healed herself and jumped back into the fray. Appearing behind the two, Shiro's lips curled up into a grin. You don't mind if I cut you in half, right? Shiro asked. Go for it. It's not like it worked the last time you tried. The ancient terror smiled as a wave of energy exploded out of Sylvanes' blade, cutting deeply into Rokarn's back. Since the ancient terror was much bigger than Rokarn, the rest of the blades cleaved through his body even as it was healed at a visible pace. Gritting his teeth, Rokarn wanted to attack Shiro, but the ancient terror refused to let go. No matter what Rokarn did, he would just heal. Asterisk Yura, roaring out in anger. Black aura exploded out of Rokarn's body as he grabbed one of the tentacles around his body and ripped it out of the ancient terror's body. Just as he was about to heal, the black aura appeared around the wound and prevented his healing. Not only that, it was now also eating away at the rest of his body. Without saying anything, both Shiro and the ancient terror knew what was happening. The power of chaos and destruction. The divinity that destroys all. Despite his physical immortality that even Nyx guaranteed, Rokarn's divinity was one of the few that could strip such a body of its usefulness. With the ancient terror only being able to hold back the demigod for a little longer, Shiro tried her best to damage Rokarn as much as she could. While each of her strikes may cleave past his armor and onto his flesh, his wounds would keep healing. The only thing telling her that she was going damage was the fact that his armor was slowly falling to pieces. Suddenly, an orb of darkness appeared in his hand as Rokarn crushed it to pieces. In the next moment, Shiro's face became pale. After all, 14 charges of grace were used up instantly from the large crystal she had as backup. In a single move, he had caused everyone's health to go into the red. Judging by the faces of the rest of the party, they knew this as well. The crystal only has 6 charges left. Aram, Helion, Shinyu, Misu, Essel, and Keiko. All of you go back to the station, Shiro shouted out while charging at Rokarn. Summoning some nanotech chains, Shiro restrained Rokarn and had Estrella forcefully teleport everyone away. I'll be honest, Shiro, our chances don't look that good. The ancient terror frowned while clawing away at Rokarn was not affected in the slightest. I know, Shiro nodded her head, glancing at her skill list. There were a few skills that she could use, but they had short durations and long cooldowns. With how strong Rokarn was proving to be, Shiro didn't think these skills would help protect the others. I've held back long enough. Rokarn barely managed to squeeze out before divine energy erupted from his body. Coating his sword with black runes, he shattered the nanotech chains without much trouble and slashed towards the ancient terror. Widening his eyes, the ancient terror felt his body freeze up in fear as the blade cleaved through his flesh. Feeling pain deep within his soul, he felt as though his existence was being erased, not unlike what Shiro could do. Immediately abandoning his physical body, he watched as what was supposed to be immortal by primordial standards withered away and disappeared. Unless you have another immortal body I can use to fight him, there's not much else I can do. I'm not really known for my magical prowess. The ancient terror warned as he drifted over to Shiro. Staying silent, Shiro dragged him back to the lantern. There was nothing else that he could do to help. She was hoping that his immortality would allow them to fight behind a powerful shield, but that shield didn't even last 2 minutes against Rokarn. Plus, the fact that Rokarn could kill something that was supposed to be immortal concerned her. For all she knew, her skill that stops her allies from dying may not work the way she wants it to. We're having another change of plans. Everyone but me, Nantion, Revel, and Cyrodiil leave, Shiro shouted out, activating her skilled demigoddess of war and protection. Divine energy wrapped around Shiro as she elevated herself to the status of a Tier 7 demi-god temporarily. Clasping her hands together, nanobots suddenly flooded the area as it created a prison for Rokarn. Waving her finger, everyone but the people she mentioned were teleported away while Addy and Nimue remained. Both of them were essentially a demigod in stats and had unique bonuses. Addy is a mage and Nimue was a support. Her healing couldn't be compared to Sylvia's, but it was better in this scenario since she wouldn't get one shot by Rokarn. Hopefully, we're going all out. If you have berserk skills, use them, Shiro said coldly as both Revel and Cyrodiil nodded. Closing her eyes, red energy flared around her as her name tag darkened to a gray that threatened to go black. Snapping her eyes open, everyone was suddenly dragged into a different realm as several clones of Cyrodiil appeared around Rokarn. The moment one of them touched his body, his skin started to flake away, and so did his flesh. Realizing that her power counters divine energy, Rokarn twisted his body and swung his blade, shattering the clones near him. He was about to charge at Cyrodiil when Revel appeared next to him. Celestial energy wrapped around his hand as he slammed his fist into Rokarn's ribs. Not caring that his strike barely brought out a reaction, Revel grabbed Rokarn by the arm and kicked him in the stomach, launching him towards another clone of Cyrodiil who unwrapped herself into a strange red scarf of sorts. Latching onto Rokarn's arms, the scarf slowly eroded away at him while Shiro activated a Tier 7 magic circle on her blade. She didn't use error before due to caution and not wanting to show all of her cards too soon, but at this stage, there was no more room for holding back. Sylvanni's passive skill, when infused with the power of, you are able to strike towards their source code. Activating Analysis EX, the world in her eyes slowed down as she could clearly see an easy path for her blade to find purchase against his chest. Coursing divine energy through her blade, a faint flicker of light could be seen near his heart. The source code, Shiro thought with narrowed eyes. Tracing her finger along the blade, several Tier 8 magic circles appeared around Rokarn. Activating her origin skill, Time Flux, she disappeared from her spot. Pucci. Widening his eyes, Rokarn looked down at the blade through his chest and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Slowly turning his head back, he stared at Shiro before grabbing her blade. Raising his hand, divine energy flared around him as black runes appeared on his arm. Pausing in shock, Shiro watched as the source code within his heart slowly unraveled itself and reassembled in his hand. Activating a Tier 8 magic circle, he sealed the source code into his arm. URH. Unleashing a pulse of energy, He pushed everyone away from him and grabbed the red ribbons with his spare hand. A purple glow appeared in his eyes as corruption slowly spread through the ribbons, etching black runes on the surface and rendered them useless. Tugging on the ribbon, he dragged Cyrodiil in front of him before grabbing her face. Twisting his body, he activated a Tier 8 magic circle and threw her towards the moon. Asterisk bang! Crashing against the moon, a small crater could be seen from space. With Cyrodiil out of his path, Rokarn summoned black mist and used it to grab Revel. Narrowing his eyes, he clenched his fist and crushed Revel using the mist. Asterisk crack! Hearing the bones crack and break under pressure, Nantion could see Revel being tossed aside. Corruption could be seen coursing through his body, hindering his natural regeneration as Grace was struggling to heal him up to max health. Behind him, Shiro suddenly appeared and swung her blade. Asterisk clang, clashing against Rokarn's greatsword. Sylvanes was halted mid-swing as a black shadows flowed from the greatsword to the silver surface of Sylvanes. Realizing that something went wrong, Shiro immediately tried to dismiss Sylvanes, but it was as though the blade was locked in this realm, unable to leave. Forming a blade with his hand, Rokarn slashed towards Shiro. Asterisk Poochie. Furrowing his brows, Rokarn frowned when he saw that his hand did not cut Shiro, but instead Nantion. Asterisk cough. Coughing up a mouthful of blood, Nantion grabbed Rokarn's wrist and stared him down. A golden crest slowly manifested on his arm as Shiro recognized it to be Hemera's crest. Flames burst out from his body, sending out a golden shockwave that dispelled the corruption on Sylvanes and Revel, allowing the Leviathan to heal himself. While this was happening, Nantion dragged Rokarn away from Shiro. Understanding that the moon was probably the only place they can fight for now, Nantion activated a Tier 7 magic circle using Hemera's crest. An orb of light appeared in his hand as he slammed it against Rokarn's chest. Asterisk bang. Exploding in an instant, Rokarn's body was sent crashing towards the surface of the moon. However, a black chain suddenly wrapped around Nantion's neck as he was dragged along with the demigod. Gritting her teeth, Shiro slammed her hand down, activating a Tier 7 array as nanobots flooded the area around her, preventing the two from tumbling to space. A giant maw snapped the chain in half and spears shot towards Rokarn. However, the spear was unable to pierce his armor as they weren't rainbow-grade weapons like Sylvanes. Crumbling the moment they touched him, the spears were not able to deal any damage, but Shiro never intended for them to deal damage in the first place. With the nanobots now floating around him, Shiro narrowed her eyes and snapped her finger. Each of the nanobots suddenly transformed into a tiny Tier 7 array that was compact to the point it was the size of a thumb. In the silence of space, Shiro activated a second skill she had thought up of when witnessing how effective Helios was against Rokarn. Each of the nanobots would transform and reflect Helios power within a small confined space caused by the spears shattering to pieces. With every reflection, the power would be amplified by the nanobots. And since Rokarn was surrounded by nanobots, with some on his armor, it was up to Shiro when the attack would land against him. Since it grew stronger with each reflection, she would want it to reflect as much as possible before striking. Activating Analysis EX, time slowed to a near halt as her mind simulated the reflection and adjusted the nanobots accordingly. In a few short moments, tens to hundreds of reflections had piled up as there was now a ball of light in the middle of a giant nanotech station that Shiro had created to stop the two from reaching the moon. Framing the orb between her hands, Shiro narrowed her eyes and collapsed the orb. With the orb collapsing around him, Rokarn dismissed his greatsword and summoned two gauntlets. While the attack was frying his skin, he gathered energy into his hand before punching forwards. Asterisk bang. Shattering the bottom half of the orb, his attack forced Shiro's spell to break apart. TCH. Clicking her tongue, Shiro summoned Sylvanes and dashed towards him. Asterisk clang. Seeing that Rokarn blocked her blade, she dismissed Sylvanes and grabbed his arm. Using it as a handle, she swung herself over his head and activated a Tier 7 magic circle behind him. Summoning Sylvanes once more, Shiro twisted her body and stabbed towards him. Asterisk Poochie. Teleporting away before Rokarn could grab her, Shiro activated the Tier 7 magic circle. Suddenly, golden chains erupted from Sylvanes' handle and slowly crawled towards where he had sealed his source code. Before it could reach the spot, Rokarn grabbed the chains with his spare hand and attempted to pry it from his body. Who the hell throws other people into planets? Reappearing behind Rokarn with anger in her eyes, Cyrodiil grabbed his arm and prevented him from removing the chains. Hello, Mother Kerr. It's me again. Cyrodiil growled while partially transforming her arms into those of a dragon's. Bang. Elbowing her in the chest, Rokarn wanted to push her off him, but she was steadfast. With Cyrodiil now restraining his movements, the chains slowly reached the source code. The moment the chains touched the spot, Shiro felt something connecting her to the source code through the magic. Unlike what happened with her sword, this was not her attempting to destroy the code. Her mind went blank as she was overwhelmed with a surge of power that shattered her spell to pieces, causing her to fly back towards the walls of her station. Bang. Catching her before she slammed into the wall, Nantion could see her face twisted with pain. Don't mind me. Go help Cyrodiil. Shiro squeezed out as her body was just in shock after being flooded with so much energy. Furrowing his brows, Nantion nodded his head and dashed towards Rokarn. Summoning an array of light blades, he slashed towards Rokarn, making sure to avoid the armor since he knew that he was not capable of piercing past its defenses. Twisting his body, Rokarn attempted to use Cyrodiil as a shield, but the blades adjusted themselves at the last second. Slashing against his flesh, the blades caused burns against his skin that healed quickly. However, his goal was not to land a strong attack, but rather branding him with a marker so that someone else can finish the job. Suddenly, Adi appeared behind Rokarn. In his hands was a pure white greatsword made from energy that caused Cyrodiil to sweat from the heat. While the fight was going on, Adi had been teleported near the sun by Shiro so that he could empower his attack. Without saying anything, Adi swung towards Rokarn while Nantion grabbed Cyrodiil and jumped out of the way. Boom. In the silence of space, a giant pillar of light appeared, slashing apart the station and extended beyond what the eye could see. Once the flames cleared up, Rokarn could be seen on his knees, but he was not dead. Little by little, his wounds healed up as he opened his mouth. Helios was stronger, boy. Flashing in front of Adi, he grabbed his head and slammed him against the floor. Raising his foot, he stomped down against Adi's chest, causing him to cough up a mouthful of blood. The moment he did this, Shiro, Nimue, and Izul surrounded him. Roots sprouted from the nanobots and restrained his movements while Nimue applied both buffs and debuffs while amplifying Shiro's mana. As for Shiro, she summoned Sylvanes and activated Effect 1 and 4. Sylvanes Effect 1. When activated, your stats are doubled and Sylvanes will deal 100% true damage. Sylvanes Effect 4. You can infuse any element into this blade and the effectiveness will be boosted by 200% and ignores all resistance towards that element. However, she wasn't done. With her stats now doubled, she activated Limit Focus and converted her INT stats into raw power. Converting 80% of her current INT stat, she slashed towards Rokarn. With the current buffs, there was no defense that Rokarn could use that protected him due to Sylvanes' effects. Bang. Gah. Hearing the demigod cry out in pain, Shiro watched as her blade eradicated his flesh, adjusting her grip so that she could swing at him again. Shiro took a step forward, but Rokarn was faster. Cutting himself diagonally from the neck to the armpit, he severed his head along with the arm containing the source code from his main body. Exploding some mana in front of him, he created some distance and regenerated his entire body while cladding himself with spare armor from his inventory. However, his main armor was now in tatters. Similar to the past, he watched as the God Slayer destroyed his armor that he was so proud of. While she has demonstrated raw power that forced him to use one of his life-saving skills, Rokarn was not optimistic about her physique. After all, a short contact with the source code caused such a violent reaction that almost knocked her out. Well, if she can survive this, then it'll prove that she's ready. If not, then I'll try to delay things, I suppose. Rokarn thought to himself as he summoned the source code and placed it back into his chest. Black runes spread across the surface of his skin as his aura started to grow at an abnormal rate. Realizing what this was, Shiro gritted her teeth and teleported everyone but herself away. Everyone was already struggling with him demonstrating parts of his power, but if he was to reveal his true form, they would not stand a chance. The only way she could see herself contending against this was using Blessing of Chaos to reach Tier 8 as well. Thankfully, Blessing of Chaos was still usable in terms of combat power, otherwise Shiro would not know what to do in this situation. Slowly, Rokarn's body started to shift as his flesh transformed into a weave of gold and purple energy. In his chest, an orb of pure darkness could be seen surrounded by a metallic harness that represented his ribcage. Cosmic armor wrapped around his body while his aura started to disintegrate the nanobots near him. Reaching out with his hand, he snapped his finger. Bang! Feeling an overwhelming pressure erupt from Rokarn, Shiro was slammed into the floor by the aura. Cursing in her mind, Shiro was about to activate her Blessing of Chaos when she realized that she had been picked up by the neck by Rokarn. Energy flared around him as Shiro quickly activated Time Flux and broke out of his grasp with the help of Sylvanis. But before her Time Flux could finish its activation duration, Rokarn's body started to move as any spell that touched him would be destroyed, including her Time Flux. TSK, not even Time Flux can hold him, Shiro thought to herself while trying to create some distance so that she could activate Blessing of Chaos. Parrying his attacks one by one, Shiro found herself being cornered. To make matters worse, there was a strange aura around him that was slowly destroying her armor that Helion had created for her. Thankfully, Sylvanis was indestructible, but from the way it was warping whenever Rokarn struck, Shiro found herself doubting its defenses. King Hell. I didn't think there was ever a need for me to use this, Shiro thought as she pulled out a certain dagger that she had kept in her inventory. Activating Time Flux once more, she disappeared from her spot and reappeared behind Rokarn. Her goal was never to run away using Time Flux, so that fact that he broke it faster than before didn't concern her. Twisting her body, she flooded mana into the blade and stabbed it into Rokarn's exposed back. Charm of Aphrodite. Enemies hit by this weapon have an 80% chance to be charmed if they're part of the same species or similar. For others, it is reduced to 50%. When charmed, they will do everything for you as long as it follows their line of thought. Should you damage them, the charm is cancelled. If you order them to kill themselves without a good reason, the charm is cancelled. Suddenly, a Tier 8 magic circle activated on the blade as it disintegrated into pink wisps that surrounded Rokarn. His eyes glazed over as his movements halted. Seeing that it was a success, Shiro immediately jumped back and activated Blessing of Chaos since the charm wouldn't last long. Not against someone like Rokarn after all. And as expected, Rokarn snapped out of it in a few moments and turned towards Shiro, who was now flaring her Tier 8 aura. Her form was relatively the same except for her aura and the armor that surrounded her body. However, upon laying his eyes on her form, Rokarn felt emotional since this was the same God Slayer that he remembered seeing so long ago. What round is it now? I've lost count, but I suppose we can call this round 2. Shiro spoke coldly. She used my dagger. Shame it's a one-time use. Aphrodite muttered with a charming smile while kissing a god on the lips, draining them of their life essence. In the void of space, two figures repeatedly flashed through the station, colliding at every turn. Each attack blocked would cause the walls to crumble and the floor to shatter. Each spell they cast would obliterate large portions of the station that Shiro had created. Clicking her tongue, Shiro stomped down with her foot and created a prison around Rokarn while summoning Sylvanis. Twisting her body, she slashed towards his chest, but he retaliated by conjuring a wave of energy. Rather than blocking her strike, since her sword ignored all armor, it pushed it to the side, using her momentum against her. Even if Shiro tried to activate Sylvanis' effect of jumping forward in space, Rokarn was able to react in time. Adjusting her grip on Sylvanis, Shiro sent her elbow towards him while simultaneously activating a Tier 8 magic circle beneath the two of them. Catching her elbow, Rokarn snapped his finger and canceled out her magic. Pushing up and breaking her guard just for a moment, he sent a bullet of divine energy towards her shoulder. Pucci. Quickly jumping back, Shiro regenerated her arm and surrounded him with guns. Activating Artemis' blessing that makes it so that her ranged attacks never miss, Shiro fired a wave of bullets towards Rokarn. However, the demigod only conjured up a barrier around him that stopped the bullets and reflected them back at the guns. Using this as a distraction, Shiro appeared above him and threw two nanotech needles towards his body. Ping. Clashing against the ribbon of energy that floated around Rokarn, the needles were not pushed aside as they did not ignore armor like Sylvanis. But this was what Shiro wanted to see. Activating the needle, it instantly switched places with Sylvanis. Grabbing the hilt, Shiro exploded a pocket of mana behind the sword to increase its momentum. Seeing this, Rokarn split his body in half, causing the sword to miss before fusing the two halves together once more. Punching Shiro in the chest, a second wave of energy clashed into her body, sending her crashing through the walls of the station. The force of his punch had shattered Shiro's ribcage, causing her bones to pierce her lung and force her to throw up a mouthful of blood. Angelic wings unfurled from her back as it wrapped around her and shattered into orbs of healing light that recovered her back to max HP. Despite her nanotech demigoddess physique making it so that her MP can be used as HP as well, Rokarn's attacks were simply too devastating. If it wasn't for this skill, she would have long burned through all of her skills and died in the process. Watching her MP begin to regenerate once more, Shiro sighed, while ducking down to avoid Rokarn's follow-up attack. Grabbing his arm, she reinforced her body and punched up towards his elbow. Asterisk crack. Pulling him towards her, she then placed her hand against his chest before performing an empowered 1-inch punch. Asterisk bang. Sending Rokarn sliding back, Shiro stomped down and caused several nanotech spikes to erupt from the around in an attempt to pierce him, but Rokarn was long prepared. Weaving through the spikes, he used them as a platform, launching himself towards Shiro. The energy around him started to transform as it morphed into a ring of blades. Sending them towards Shiro, he activated a Tier 8 magic circle, causing it to instantly expand and set nodes down around the station. Clicking her tongue, Shiro clasped her hands together before slamming it against the ground. Suddenly, the entire station disappeared as the nodes lost their anchor point. Pausing in surprise, Rokarn watched as a void opened up behind him, sucking everything into one point. Activating a Tier 8 magic circle, Shiro borrowed the power of Helios once more as she collapsed a star around him. Asterisk ping. Breaking out of the collapsing star, Rokarn was about to attack when he realized that a brand new structure was constructed around him. Thousands upon thousands of rail cannons were aimed towards him, while turrets acted as the bridge that connected one cannon to another. It was a sphere that was purely created from weapons, and each one housed hundreds of Tier 8 magic circles. Outside this weapon, Shiro could be seen with a Tier 8 array around her, while divine energy flared around her. The strange crystals that she used to empower mana were in the center of this array, and it had golden runes carved onto the surface. Snapping her finger, the mana around Rokarn disappeared as she created a null mana zone. Firing the weapon, hundreds of thousands of lasers concentrated on Rokarn as his flesh burned away by the attack. Narrowing his eyes, Rokarn grabbed the black hole in his chest and activated a Tier 8 array that was hidden in his body. His form suddenly expanded as he crushed the weapon with his hands. However, upon seeing his enlarged form, Shiro threw Sylvanis above him and activated a Tier 8 magic circle. Snapping her finger, Sylvanis pierced towards Rokarn, breaking multiple sound barriers as it shot through the magic circle. Before Rokarn could do anything else, a giant sword cleaved his form in two. Within the center of this form, Rokarn barely dodged the blade, but the energy that it radiated still obliterated his arm. Noticing that the healing was slowing down, Shiro immediately traded places with her blade and summoned it back into her hand. Stabbing it towards him, she tried to activate extraction, but Rokarn's body shattered to pieces and reassembled the giant. Widening her eyes, Shiro created a bomb outside of his body and traded places before she was trapped. Asterisk boom. Exploding the bomb, there was now a large cavity in his chest. Checking her internal clock, Shiro frowned, seeing that her skill only had a few minutes left. She was still far from killing this demigod. Suddenly, a pair of glowing red eyes could be seen from within the floating flesh of Rokarn. Realizing that she couldn't move her body, Shiro instinctively activated Grace to bolster her defense. Asterisk Pucci. Punching through Shiro's body, Rokarn could be seen grabbing her heart while attempting to rip her in half. However, before he could, nanobots suddenly exploded out from her body, causing him to let go and jump back since they were enhanced by error. Quickly healing herself, Shiro was feeling the strain of constantly healing her body from near-fatal attacks. "Mom, let me help," Addie cried out from within, but Shiro shook her head. "No, sorry darling, but I can't fight him while focusing on protecting you. He has something that allows him to kill something that was supposed to be immortal. I hate to say it, but you can't do anything here." Shiro sighed while dodging Rokarn's next attack. But you're fighting a losing battle. At least let me help. From what he's seen, Adi knew that Shiro couldn't keep this up. Rokarn wasn't tired at all while Shiro was straining herself more and more. The reason why she was able to react to some of the attacks was that she enhanced her eyes using analysis EX along with reinforcing her body. If she was a warrior-focused fighter, he wouldn't be so worried, but she is still at the end of the day, a mage. Fighting at this ferocity would tire her out, especially since her skill has a timer. Even if she does have the title virtue of fortitude that allows her to keep fighting, her body won't be able to keep up with her will. Adi wasn't the only one that was worried. Nimue, Izul, and Estrella watched with a frown. As much as they wanted to help, this was out of their power, and their help would only make matters worse. They were nothing more than distractions if they joined the fight. Asterisk bang. Gritting her teeth, Shiro felt dizzy as she barely managed to avoid his attack. Stumbling back, she quickly recovered and created some distance between the two of them. However, without giving her time to catch her breath, a weave of energy wrapped around Shiro's neck as she was pulled towards him. Activating a Tier 8 magic circle, an orb of divine energy exploded near Shiro's abdomen. Holding back a scream despite missing her lower half of her body, Shiro gritted her teeth and launched a point-blank attack with Sylvanis. Cutting off Rokarn's head, Shiro quickly activated Fire of Life and healed her wounds while Rokarn did the same. Meanwhile, everyone watched from afar with worried faces. Misu gritted her teeth and pulled Essel aside. Activating a magic circle, her aura started to shift. You don't need to call upon me. Let me rest. Essel spoke as his voice changed. But don't worry, 2 more are coming. Essel reassured as Misu frowned but decided to trust him. After healing her wounds, Shiro was about to move when Rokarn appeared in front of her. While Shiro was slowing down the longer this fight took, Rokarn wasn't affected at all. Just as his attack was about to land, a hand blocked his strike and sent a punch towards his chest. It's not even the second half, and 2 demigods are already fighting in the mortal plane. Fufu. Back in my day, the most would happen at this stage would be queens fighting one another. An old man laughed as he stood in front of Shiro. Macron LVL 1000 Demon God, Divinity 2.